I can't move the way I used to, had to call the audible. I put in the work, no humble flex. And talk of the town, you see who next. They on checkers, I'm on chess. Had to hit her with the X. XenHouse.
It's your boy, Des Hines.
It's your boy, A. Joe.
And Ross B.
Oh my gosh. This is
You see what we got to do? Because
unacceptable,
one time,
Ross.
he's either Ross Bertrand or he's like, Ross B. I don't know who this guy is.
What's going on? I can't say my name, guys.
What's your name? What does B stand for?
Ross B.
Okay.
Why you say it like that? it's like this dude got a fan with a bottle of spray and all that. Like, come on. Goodness. Today we got a very special guest on our show. This guy has seen us all grow. He's been a pivotal part in our football success. Me personally, I've known him before football started at the high school level. And right now he's just an old man to us.
Wow.
But without further ado,
I would,
Kevin Jones. What's up, baby? Yeah.
I prefer mythical figure than old man at this point. Since you talk about me every week on this podcast, whether you like it or not.
Listen, you did a good job setting the standard for us. So that means something if we keep talking about
Number
it.
one thing we should talk about, the standard. Right? Shouldn't we talk about that?
We should talk about
Go ahead.
Hold on. Before you continue, I don't think Alex mentioned that this is our former head coach at Stamford High School.
Yes.
Yes.
Don't get it messed up.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I messed that up. Go ahead. What you got?
Well, yeah, former head coach of Stamford High School. Currently, I'm the defensive coordinator at Western Connecticut State University. Conference champs, NCAA playoffs.
Oh,
Just in case you were wondering.
In case you hadn't
let
heard.
it be known.
In case you hadn't heard.
We know.
But yeah, let's talk about the standard, right? What was the standard? We use that term a lot, right? What was it?
You want me to go or?
Hey, you can go.
Somebody that knows the answer.
I was going to say something else.
Good.
Go ahead. You
Go.
got it.
You.
Nah,
give
I was
me
just.
So I think for us, the standard was right. Like you wanted to bring a mental toughness, and you also wanted to bring like a winning program, right, to Stanford High. Before you were there, I don't recollect Stanford High having a winning record, or if there was any structure. So first and foremost, I think when you got there, the structure was very different, right? Like when we were freshmen, we were like, we got to play for this guy next year. You know what I mean? Like when we become sophomores, juniors, right? Like we looked forward to having something where it was going to win, where we were going to win. There was going to be some kind of like mental focus there. And that was the standard.
I think just, being on time was that. Grades.
Right.
If you could have had all the ability in the world, if you didn't have the grades, you weren't even touching the field.
Right.
And just, practicing hard. I think that was some of the main points. What about you, Alex? What do you think?
I say this all the time to our younger athletes. You prepared us for the next level but without even knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
So the structured practice, the study hall, even though we messed around in study hall and broke shit. I'll tell you now, years later, we can throw that out there. But the study hall, just, the film study, the camp,
right.
all the camps we went to, just the structure and practice, it was college-like. So when I got to college, it wasn't a transition. Game speed, just football knowledge, learning the game of football. Nowadays, these kids don't even watch film.
Yeah.
I asked some of these kids literally in high school, like, what are some things that you're noticing? They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you watching film for? They don't even know who they're playing.
Players. They don't know.
So I would say the standard in regards to what you taught us, from my standpoint, my viewpoint, was preparing us for the next thing, not even knowing we were preparing for it.
Yeah. I think I'm going to tell you a story. When I got hired at Stanford High, first of all, and I did save this for the podcast, okay? I was younger than you guys are right now. Isn't that pretty crazy to think about?
That's pretty crazy.
Right? Yep.
Nobody in Stanford in high school wanted to hire me. Nobody.
Yep.
Okay?
We remember that.
There was only two guys that applied. Me and a guy who just been fired for using racial slurs in practice.
Oh, goodness.
so I'd like to say that I was the most qualified candidate, but they didn't really have a choice because nobody else wanted the job.
Oh,
right?
Man.
So there was 2 people interviewed. I was the last guy standing because the other guy had no shot. But what scared them, I think, is the fact that I showed up at the interview with like a vision for what I wanted to get out of this program. And just like I've said a million times, I think there's a lot of high schools that have football teams, and then there's high schools that have football programs. And there's a huge difference. And I wanted to have a program, which is something that Stamford High just hadn't had in a really, since the 1960s and early 70s, right? So I came in with this vision, and I had to step on a lot of toes to try and get it done. And I think I came in, and I remember the athletic director at the time said to me, you can't keep pissing everybody off. And I'm like, but you guys don't understand. Like, I know where I need to get to, and you guys, like, there's nobody supporting me in the building, right? So the vision was always to create a program, which is why I started the whole 4 stages of Black Knight's life. You're born, you beat West Hill, you get married, you die, and they're all equally important, right? And so the cool thing about you guys growing up in Stamford is you have that city rivalry. And when Trinity was there, it was awesome with the 3 schools. And I knew that everybody was friends with everybody else anyway. Like, you all grew up and then you kind of split up and go to the different high schools. But we made it into a thing where it was like you could trash talk year round. You know what I mean? And that was my first step was like, let's make the rivalry an actual rivalry. Not like, it's not a 1-week rivalry. It's a 12 months out of the year rivalry, and we can talk crap to each other and kind of have it. And I think some of the other coaches and the other teams took that the wrong way, but I didn't care because I knew it was good for us. And that standard, like I came in, I'm like, listen, I want to win the state championship here and all that stuff, like every other coach does, right? But it quickly became apparent to me that for us to be successful, we couldn't lose 25 guys on Thanksgiving Day for that game because report cards came out and nobody was eligible. So then you start thinking, okay, between my wife and I, there's 6 college degrees on the wall. So then we start talking about the standard. What standard are we setting? For me, if it was my own kids, and at the time I didn't have any kids, I would use those college degrees as motivation to this unacceptable to not want to go to college. You will strive to go to college. And that's obviously what I've done with my own kids. So then I said, okay, well, what if all of these kids were my own kids? All right. Well, and if I ask this question to you guys, do any of you believe that during the 4 years that you were in high school, that at any point in time it was acceptable for you guys to not be striving to go to college?
College was always like it's. I felt like not going to college was not even an option, or not even in my mind. College was happening no matter what.
Because I'd like to tell again. I'm going to tell some stories here today. Probably
you should.
But when I looked at it, okay, and this is an interesting. I'm a fact and figure kind of guy, a data analysis guy. So at the time, in Stamford, only 55% of the student body of the high schools were going to 4-year schools, okay? When I left Stamford High and I went back and I looked at all the guys that played for us all 4 years, all right, we had 95% of the kids go to 4-year schools. And they didn't all play football. There were great success stories. A guy like Fritz Suri. Fritz came to me, because you guys were freshmen with Fritz, you two. Fritz came to me at the end of his freshman year, and he's like, I'm going to be your starting center next year. And I was like, we're going to lose a lot of games, and you are. right. 125-pound soaking wet, right? But, he bought into the thing, right? And he was a pain in my ass for 4 years, constantly asking questions nonstop. What about this? What about that? And he still does that to this day, right? But he was successful because of this drive and wound up being I put you over the top. And he was the safety that was down at the line, right? And like I've said this a million times, nobody can throw a bubble screen on Fritz, not for 2 years. The entire FCX stopped doing it against us because
his job.
He knew what he had to do to be successful. And I think a guy like him, so there's an example of a guy that didn't necessarily play football, just bought in, and in the end, wound up being super successful as a student, super successful on the field, got into school, went on, and is doing things in the community now that are positive or negative, however you want to look at it, but he is doing everything that he set out to do, which is trying to be successful, which I think is a first great story of the day, right? But that standard had to be set. And for me, when I look back at it, yeah, there was a lot of football scholarships, and yeah, we did a lot of cool things, and I think we had a lot of fun, like you said, the camps and all that. There were some really unique experiences. In the end, I look back at it and I go 95%. When I first took that job, we had 36 kids on a team, right? And you guys had a big freshman team, but there was 36 kids, sophomore through senior, and by year 3, we had 90, and by year 4, by the time you guys were seniors, we had 120 kids. Sophomore through senior. To me, a lot of that had to do with we set the standard and parents were able to buy into that. And it had nothing to do with winning. It had everything to do with you will do what you're supposed to do. And I think that's the standard that we kind of set.
Well, Vlad and Big B counted as like 15 people each.
But then we would have had 160 on the team.
Right. No, but that structure, right, I think is what kept me engaged, you know, because I didn't have that at home. So like, I always tell people, right, like talking about college and stuff like that. I didn't have a vision of college until we started going to camps. And I said, oh, nah, I have to go. So like that changed my perspective of leaving the town. You know what I mean? We started going to, I mean, you were a year younger than us, but when myself, Alex, and Vlad were traveling, it was just like,
that he would drive us to.
He would drive us to.
People don't understand that. A lot of these, that's why I said a lot of these, sorry to cut you off, these coaches aren't invested.
But he was hands-on,
like
and that changed. It might have changed your perspective. It might have changed Vlad's perspective. Vlad was fresh off, you know, coming from Haiti. Who would have thought? But like, it changed our road. You know what I mean?
He took a plane, but I always said he stepped off the boat. Stepped off the boat. Yeah. No, you know, for you guys, like, I'll just quickly, because I think it's important for your current clients and the future ones to know that it isn't like what you see now as a finished product with you guys. And I saw the very rough draft of what has now become you guys. Early, that's why you're last. But like,
fuck.
If I go, listen, but it's all positive. I go through each one because I was driving down here today. I'm like, you know, let's think about these 3 individual stories that obviously are intertwined throughout your lives, which is the best part of the story. But, you know, Des, you were the easiest one for me because your grades were always good. Always good. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, and you were always where you're supposed to be. You're never late. You're always, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that your mom could, with a pair of binoculars, step out the front door and go, is he on the field where he's supposed to be? Is he in the gym where he's supposed to be? You know what I mean? So, and after school for you were either in Boyle Stadium or in the gym, and that's the way, and it was for all you guys, right? That's what we did. Just year round, we're in the stadium or in the gym. And I think for you, based on who your parents were, you know, how your family structured, all that stuff, the college thing was easy for you to buy into because I think it was, like you said, no question. This is what I want to do. And you were the easiest one to get into college.
That's how he started with Des.
So, yeah, if you want to talk about the standard path to college, go to Des. If you'd like to talk about non-standard paths to college, you can talk to these two.
Graduated.
Graduated. But that's one story, right? And that's why I think it's really cool that you guys are so connected throughout your lives, because it is 3 very different stories. With Ross, you know, I remember so one of the things that we like to do when they talk about camps and stuff, like I always wanted to bring you guys, like, let's go to the UConn camp. Let's go to the Boston College camp. And, you know, I always worked it out through fundraising that it was never too much for you guys. Y'all had to pay something.
Right.
But I always had the bus. You know, I paid Frank to drive the bus. And poor Frank Russo would have to drive us everywhere, right? But you get a chance to go to UConn and spend 3.5 days on UConn's campus. Had you ever been there before? All 3 of you would have said no. You know what I mean? And then the next year we're at Boston College or wherever we went, right? And I remember, you know, bringing you guys and TJ and maybe somebody. We all went up to UMass that one time, kind of, you know, the summer before your senior year. I drove you guys everywhere that year, trying to make sure people knew who you were. But I look at everybody and I say, okay, if you're a coach and you take a job at a place like Stamford High, and it applies to a lot of schools in this immediate area, but a lot of schools throughout the state and throughout the area, you know, taking a job working with kids that don't necessarily have their own cars, you know what I mean, don't necessarily have 2 parents that work or a single parent home and they work, and they don't get exposed to this stuff unless you take them there.
Yep.
And I have to give a lot of credit to all of because Coach Brandon would drive you guys places. And I remember
Tony
Targia, Coach Hawk, all those guys, everybody was bought into this whole thing, which was our number one goal is these guys have to go to college. Like they have to be exposed to it. And if they choose not to go, that's okay too. It's not like there's something wrong with you, but like give them the chance to make a choice and put them in a position to be successful so they can do what they really want to do. And I know that for you, I don't know how much, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, how much as a 14-year-old college was part of your daily thought process.
It wasn't.
But as a 16-year-old, I think things started to change.
Absolutely.
And as I remember, at the end of your senior year, you had a really, really good senior year. And I remember you coming to me and saying, I really want to play college football. And I'm like, let's sit down.
Right.
Let's print a transcript and let's sit down and let's talk about. And what I think a lot of coaches miss is that there's a reason for prep schools. There's a reason for junior colleges. There's a reason, and so you have to use them as a tool, not just, hey, this kid can't get into the school he wants. Let's send him to prep school and let him pay $60,000 a year.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then at the end, they wind up going to some school they don't want to go to anyway.
Exactly.
Right. So with you, we had to make I can talk about this, right?
Yeah.
All right. I didn't clear it with you before. We had to make a really, really tough choice because people don't understand if you graduate from high school and then you go to prep school, whatever you do in prep school can't help your GPA.
Right.
And for you, it was all about the sliding scale, the clearinghouse, because there were scholarships available, but you couldn't qualify for them because we had to make the scale slide in our favor. And so the choice that I let, and I to this day, I still can't believe we got away with this, was you're going to leave high school January 15th and go to a prep school. And you're actually going to graduate from the prep school so that the classes you take at the prep school can go back and boost your GPA.
Yep.
And it was not something that was done a lot back in those days, but, we called a chap and, got it all figured out. But then you told me, you got to come to my house and talk to my father. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Right. So now.
Yes.
All right.
Because so the reason that happened, right? He's kind of skipping a little part, but like the reason that happened when I was like, "Hey, you got to talk to my dad because I don't know what's going on." He said, "Ross, you're gonna have to leave next week," and I was like, "Huh?" Like you can't do the second semester. You can't do this. You can't do that. You gotta leave. Like as soon as January 15th hit, you got to go. And I was like, okay. I mean, but
it was after January 1st. I mean, we were at that point.
It happened quick. And like, I didn't even get a chance to tell you guys.
Right.
It was just like Jones had it set up and I had to go.
I thought Ross went to West Hill.
I thought he was going to the Army, though.
So you can finally play running back, right?
Deployed.
Yeah, so it was a tough decision. I went and I sat down with you and your dad, and I had never met your father before.
This was the first time.
And he was so much older than the other parents that I was dealing with. I'm like, all right, how do I approach this? When I walked in, you didn't give me any warning, So, and somehow we managed it. In the end, I got the two hands together, and God bless you. And I figured, okay, he understands what I'm talking about, and he's just saying, if you know what you're doing, go for it.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out of that house and getting in my car going, I hope I'm doing the right thing. Because, I didn't know. But that was what we had to do.
Yeah.
And in the end, right, at the end of it, you talk about going to prep school and wasting a year. And it was spring. You were running on the track and you still didn't have any offers left. And I was really, really desperate. And people have to understand that coaching is not just showing up in the afternoon, coaching the kids, and then going home. And all, it's a lot of time away from your family.
Mm-hmm.
I had Ross on the track running with a parachute, right, on the field, doing a track workout with no plan. And it was March. No, it had to be later. It might have been May.
It was May.
It was May. And I'll tell you why I know this. Because Samson called me up and was driving back from Jersey, and he was going right through Stamford.
Yep.
And he said to me, this is the coach at Albany, he's like, hey, driving by, I was going to stop by and say hello. I figured you're probably just getting out of school. I'm like, great, come on by. And he's like, listen, do you have any corners? I lost 2 to ACL injuries in spring ball. like in the last week, and they're done for the year, and I need a freaking corner. And as I'm on the phone, I'm leaning against the wall before the stadium. Here you go, running by. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe if you swing by the back entrance, I got a guy. And that's really how it worked out.
That's God right there, for real.
So when I got to Milford Academy, I don't know if you remember this, but it was like within the first week, myself and Coach Chap had called you, and I had like 3 or 4 offers, and one of the offers were Minnesota, and then Michigan State. And I don't know if you remember him telling you there was a guy, Kenny Tenney from Ansonia, and Kenny Tenney had just took the offer from Michigan State, and he's like, I'm going to MSU. So the way that they came and they kind of brought it to me was that, hey, you guys are both from Connecticut. You should both commit to Michigan State, and you guys will be like the CT corners. It'd be like the greatest thing. And you were super excited about it. And what happened was I committed to Michigan State right away. And within that time frame, right, the Michigan coach who was recruiting me, he got fired. So then that's how I ended up home.
Welcome to college football.
Yeah, he was calling me like, what are we gonna do? And he's like, Ross, you should have freaking signed those papers. What were you thinking? I remember this phone call vividly because he was screaming. He probably had a lip in.
Yep.
Yeah, he's screaming. But I'm like, Jones, I had no idea. I thought it was just like, I commit, and then that's where I'm going. You know what I mean? And when you committed, well, especially when we were in college, once you commit, everyone else is just like, whatever. Even when your guy was coming from Temple, he was like, nah, I heard you're going to MSU. So it was like, it was very new for me. So then when I got home, I was running on the track, and he was like, Ross, bring your butt inside. And we started talking on the trailer. He's like, listen, this could be a great opportunity. And then we set everything up. And then that's when Coach Bob Ford called me. And you met Bob Ford before. He called me at 6 a.m. And he's like, what are you doing, son? And I'm like, I'm just waking up. And he started telling me how he wanted me to come up for the visit. And Samson Brown actually came. He drove from Albany, picked me up.
There's no way. He wanted you.
Yo, picked me up. You sent them the film, I think.
Well, he came that day.
Yeah.
You guys actually talked, and then I talked to you more about it because, you know, when you're talking to Michigan State and then you're talking to Albany, there's a less enthusiasm there, you know. But it's just one of those things where, to me, a free education is a free education. And when some doors close, other doors open up, and a lot of people fail in life because they don't see the doors opening up because they're still looking at that closed door, you know, and so that story in and of itself is pretty amazing how it worked out. But, you know, it also goes to show that you can't be a coach that goes home every day at 2:05 because that was, you know, May, and
you know,
I'm
working,
hanging out on the track and opening the weight room and doing all that stuff. Because to me, a lot of the success stories they have are just, you know, coaches knew that if they showed up, they didn't have to sit in the front office for an hour waiting for somebody. Like, they just walked in the door. I opened the door. Like, we didn't go through security. So I had coaches coming through the office every day. You know, and it was an important way to run things because of guys like you that in the end figured it out. And not everybody's going to be 100% A+ student, you know, All-American athlete as a freshman. A lot of guys figure it out as they go, and they need opportunities too. One of the things that disappoints me about how recruiting goes now is guys are done recruiting juniors for the following year. And like you're all those guys like you that wind up having senior years that are amazing miss out on a lot of opportunities. You know, it helps guys like me now at Western Connecticut because we get a lot of those kids. You know, but the landscape's changed a lot. And I think you guys are like the last group of guys that we could play those games with and get guys ready to go. And as a senior, you still had a chance, you know?
One of the things that I took from that too is I remember I had like my Milford Academy tape, and you know when he made our film, jump like crazy, right? Film like crazy. We had he had like all the key hits, plays, runs, right? Interceptions, all of these things. So when I came back from Milford Academy after that fall, I was like, Jones, I got a bunch of film. Can you put it together for me? He's like, a lot of curse words that I'm not gonna say, right? Because I don't curse anymore. He was like, "You need to do this," and that's how I started, like watching film.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I learned how to watch film. And throughout my freshman year to senior year in college at UAlbany, I probably watched more film than anybody else because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me like a better football player. You know what I mean?
Carries over.
The last part of your story too is this, and you know, anytime somebody from Stanford gets any bit of fame or anything, they always talk about how they picked themselves up by the bootstraps and did it on my own and all that stuff, right?
Nope.
And I always say that's bullshit because
Absolutely.
the Stanford community is probably one of the most involved communities, at least that I've ever been around. And I remember the last part of your story is, I know she's gone now, but was it your kindergarten teacher?
She was my kindergarten teacher.
And you had your kindergarten teacher who, when she found out that you left Stanford High to go to Milford,
she was pissed.
Oh man, I had messages on my cell phone, my home phone, and the office line, and in the PE office.
Yep.
And she was like, "What are you doing?" And in the end, it was great because I said, why don't you come over? Let's sit down. I'll explain why we had to do this. And once you knew what was going on, but you had a person in your life that wasn't related to you, but I mean, she was keeping tabs on you from kindergarten all the way through. Yeah. Pretty amazing story.
Every stages of life, she was there. She was there like every bit of the way. And she was one of the people, I think, who kept me on that path.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? She was the first person to bring me to Milford Academy. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And like, she helped me shop for everything. She helped me. I mean, we had to get all types of clothes that we had to wear to school every day. And like, she helped me along that process, So she kept me at Milford Academy. Because if I could tell you guys the stories about Milford Academy, not a lot of people survive.
Yeah. And I remember one of my great memories, though, of how the story for me kind of all came full circle and closed up for me was I met her. You guys played at Yale. I met her in the parking lot. We tailgated and went and watched the game together.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's how it all works.
Yep.
Full circle.
What about Alex?
And then there's Alex.
I thought we were skipping on to
We're moving on to episode 58 now. So your story is unique. So you have two very different stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then your story becomes unique in that you come off now, or I shouldn't say that. I pulled into Philly during your senior year to a billboard with your partially bald head.
I had locks then.
50 feet above the highway, all right? And there you are, and it's like an advertisement for Temple season tickets and Temple Tough and all this stuff. And it's Alex Joseph on the billboard, all right? So it's like a 40-foot. It's like the Alex Joseph none of us wanted.
I was looking over Philly. Everyone loved it.
40-foot thing. It was huge, right? And it was over the high. And I remember, like, as I pulled in to go to the game, and I am just laughing because I'm like, it's just unbelievable that this guy's on a billboard. So people see that, and they're like, they don't understand how much of a goofball you were growing up. And you and I go way back before Stanford High because I used to work at Horizons, which was a summer enrichment program, and I was in charge of sports and camping. And so you and I had actually gone camping with 40 other people on a few occasions out in the woods. And I used to tell ghost stories to scare you guys and make you stay in your tents.
I was never scared. I used to I wanted to get out, and he used to yell at me all the time. Yeah. And we used to go by first name basis.
That's the key to
that changed, didn't it?
We used to also be like, Kevin this, Kevin that.
I'll tell you the story real quick. How'd you feel about that, Jones? Being called Kevin.
Well, with a bunch of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, I was fine with that.
Okay.
But the things changed, didn't they?
It changed. I'm gonna tell you when it changed. My freshman year, we're in the weight room. Mind you, I did not like the weight room growing up. I just was doing push-ups and whatever. And I remember I think I was on a squat machine with James Sinius. And I was like, Kevin, look at this. Like a little ass kid. Kevin, look at this. He wasn't paying attention. I said, Kevin, look at this. He turned around and said, motherfucker, I'm Kevin Jones to you. And I said, oh my gosh.
Coach Jones.
Coach Jones, yeah, sorry. And I
can't even tell a story.
I can't even say it right because I was shook.
And there's no way that I said mother effer. There's no way. You were a freshman. I would not have done that. There's no way. You guys have skewed all of these stories around.
No,
Every time you tell a story on mother
I was shocked because that is when I realized this is football. There's no more, Cody Nazzaro's dad was our coach in Pop Warner. So there's no more of that little, there's this. That's when I was like, yo, this is high school football. When I realized you had that, your tone changed. And I was like,
I set the standard on your ass, didn't I?
I said, damn. Never again did I ever say, look at this. I stopped that shit. No more pat on the back. Like, that shit's over. That's when it changed.
The best part about the story is, to this day, you won't call me Kevin.
Nah.
Because now it would just be too weird.
Yeah,
right?
it would be very awkward.
I was the same way with my high school coach was the same way.
But I would never just call you Kevin. It's just awkward. But that transitioned and that, again, obviously I knew respect. Both my parents taught me to respect my elders, but just knowing from camp, the summer Richmond camp to actual football, it was a whole different lifestyle.
Things. Yeah.
And I didn't know that until you had to
teach a moment.
Yeah, you had to teach that.
Listen, I always, because I watched you play basketball, soccer, softball, all the different activities we did at that camp. So I knew in middle school, I'm like, this kid's a really good athlete. And it was you and Ryan Blackman, right? Another great basketball player, really good athlete. So I knew when you came in as a freshman, you were the only freshman I really knew that was on the team. Although I knew you were a great athlete, but man, you would always be joking around. Always. Like, didn't matter, hallway, class, whatever. You would love to joke around. And not in a bad way, not in a mean way, not in a, but you would push it to the limit a little bit,
That's what my daughter does.
And it's good. You get what you deserve. You get what you deserve.
We know
I know where she gets it from.
And so never, and I don't mean never in a negative way, but always in like a way, because you wanted to make people laugh, you wanted to enjoy, you like to smile and all that. So it's not a bad thing. But I always said to myself, like, man, I just don't know if he's going to be able to take this talent to where I think he could go. And you don't really know as a coach. You think they could be great. So when I knew you had a chance, I don't know if you remember this or not, but spring football, I want to say it was probably your junior year or going into your junior year. We had a practice after school. It was really, really hot. It was one of those like 90-degree days that you don't usually get, that early in the summer, but it was hot. And we didn't do anything extraordinary at practice. It was just kind of a uppers only practice. It was, because I remember later on having to go through I'm like, did we do anything today to cause this? But at the end of practice, you collapsed. And I walked into the locker room. He fainted.
I ain't doing that.
No. You went down. And so you were like stripped down, just basically down to your spandex. And Coach Tarzi like had you in the shower, like cold water, and trying to cool you down. And you were breathing heavy, and like you couldn't get your breath. We actually called 911. And so when that happens as a football coach, all you can think about is, this is it. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to get sued, never going to work again, right? Because this guy's going to die on me, and it's going to.
Yeah.
So we take you to the hospital. Of course, I get in the car, go right to the hospital, and I'm sitting with you in the hospital. They got the IV and stuff, and you were just dehydrated, all this stuff. And I remember seeing your dad coming down the hallway because I had to call him. And your dad's got a great smile, but when he's not smiling, he looks like a mean And he's walking down, he's got the work boots and the Dickies on, and he's coming down the hallway at me. I'm like, oh, this is going to be rough, right? He comes in, he says, hey, coach, turns to you and doesn't say hello and goes, what did you have for lunch?
Yeah.
And you said Chinese food, and he's like, that's stupid. That's why this happened.
We know about Alex and Eden in high school, right?
I was hungry. So when he told you that you were stupid for having that for lunch and this whole thing was your fault, I'm like, this guy's got a chance. And I started coaching you harder and harder and harder after that day because I knew that at home, I was going to get all the support I needed.
I forgot Alex messed around and fainted.
Okay, no. First and foremost, who was it? We were down somebody, or two people were out of practice.
Oh yeah,
so I took
extra reps.
So I kept going, and I was like, I'm good. I don't need water. And the trainer was like, you need to sit down. And I'm like, I'm fine.
To be that guy.
And I tried to be him. And when I remember walking, it was like in the movie. In the movie, and your eyes blink, close, slow. And I remember walking to the locker room, and Kaufman said, "You good?" I said, "Yeah." Boom. Next thing you know, I wake up, I'm in the fucking hospital, and I'm like, got an IV. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And I saw my dad, and I woke up fast.
I'll tell you what, it was a scary day for me, but then your dad made me feel good.
Yeah, that was a wake up call.
So in the end, I knew I could coach you hard. I think I pushed you guys really hard. I know I pushed all you guys really hard. But in the end, as good a player as you were, and where's my camera? What you have to understand about Alex is he never came off the field. Punt returner, kick returner. He was the punter. He would play quarterback, running back, wide receiver, play it all as safety, linebacker, wherever I needed him. So you never came off the field, which is great. You did cramp up a lot, but but you never came off the field. But in the end, as good a player as you were, you hear this all the time. As good a player as you were an average to above average student. You were not an above average to good student, right? So, and I want to make this, I want people to understand this. You worked hard in the classroom. You got what you could, all right? But not everybody is born to go to Harvard or Yale. You know what I mean?
Right.
Some guys got to work hard in the classroom. And so your athletic ability was here, but your school ability was here, all right? Not here, but here. And so what happened was your SAT scores weren't high enough. And when George DeLeon came in, he wanted to offer you that scholarship. And George is Connecticut guy through and through. He was the best. He's like, he's not going to qualify his SAT scores. I said, don't worry about it. Now I'm making promises that I have no control of. I'm like, we got a thing here at Stanford High. Like, we'll get him all this stuff, right? And I remember, and I think this is important for people to understand even today, if it's not over till it's over, right? And we went through signing day, and you signed, and we put stuff in the paper and all that stuff, and you were not qualified at that signing day. You were not ready to go. So what happened was, if I explained to you how the SATs work, how you can take, the best score from math and the best score from the reading.
I actually didn't have a tutor for the first one, so that really fucked me up because I skipped questions and no one told me that shit like an idiot.
Yeah.
And the second time,
there were questions that were not asked on your part. Okay, but I remember saying to you, like, we can get you a program, but like right now, your reading is fine, like that whole part. I said, but your math, it sucks. So I remember we got you a little computer program. Okay, so you just had never worked hard at it, and so you got that program. And I remember saying to you, I don't care if you take the second half of it, but you're going to walk in and take that math part, and this is all you're worried about. And I don't care if you get a 0 on the other part, because we're just going to combine the scores.
Absolutely.
And you went in, and in all of my years, I have never seen anybody put 200 points on your math. Wasn't it 200?
It was a lot.
It was an enormous amount of points that you put on that.
Now I'm much better with math.
But it was not until May. So signing date back then was February. First Wednesday of February. It was not until May, right? I think May. So you took the April test or whatever, and it was not until May that you qualified. And I remember calling George and he's like, well, and I'm like, he did it. He's like, all right, boom, and he hung up the phone. That's all he wanted to hear.
That's all he wanted to hear.
But you could have derailed yourself had you not.
Yes.
But you knew how to work. And I think that I'd like to think that football, for all of you guys, was part of that. Like, this is how we work. Like, we're going to take if I just left you by yourselves and say, hey, we're going to practice from 3 to 5 and, see you tomorrow kind of thing. And I didn't do the film stuff, and we didn't push you and create a year-round strength program and be there so you guys felt like you had to be, you were being held accountable. I don't know if you would have done that with the SAT part of it. And so, that's my 3 stories of you guys. And obviously, I think that Al Golden at Temple challenged you and said, you can walk around and try to be the cool guy. It was almost like the same thing.
Literally.
Or you could be the face of the program. And you made that choice too. So you have made 2 smart decisions in your life. The rest, we don't know. But those are at least 2 smart ones. Right?
I guess.
But you don't become a captain at Temple if you don't say yes to that. You know what I mean? It doesn't just happen.
You got to make a conscious decision.
Right.
And Coach Jones, to piggyback off of what you said, you start coaching them harder. Do you think that style of coaching, which you would be able to do it in high school today with today's kids?
I think that high schools have done a tremendous disservice to themselves in the last 10 years where they limit contact with coaches and players, where you're not allowed to text players anymore. There's a lot of high schools, because I go into I'm responsible for recruiting all of Connecticut. And there are coaches that tell me, can you text the kid and let him know you're here? because I'm not allowed to do it.
That's stupid.
You know, because they have a messaging system and everything goes through the Board of Ed and all, you know, and I say to myself, you know, I look back and, you know, when you talk about my first 2 years, we didn't have any scholarship players. We had great players.
Yeah.
Like James Cobb went to Columbia. He was a great player, you know. You want to talk about setting the standard? I ever tell you this story? My first summer, remember, I got hired at Stamford High in June,
Right.
after spring football. So nobody knew me. I knew nobody. And James Cobb was in the weight room, and there was another kid, I'm not going to say his name, who was the tailback the year before, and James was actually the fullback, right? And I really liked James the way he ran. And in my system, I kind of wanted him to be the tailback, and I wasn't crazy about the other kid. But the other kid wasn't coming to the weight room. So I actually pulled the phone out in the weight room with James next to me, and I said, hey, let's call this kid and see what he's doing. And he's like, you know, I got baseball coach. He's like, don't worry, I'll be ready for the season. And I said, you know, football players like play baseball, but they come to the weight room because the weight room at the time was open 6 to 8 at night. Like you could make it, you know. And I also had the 6 to 8 in the morning thing. You know how I did it, right? So like you can either make it in the morning, you can make it at night, but like not coming is not really an option, especially if you think you're going to start. He's like, Coach, I'll be honest with you, I'm not coming to the weight room. And I said, you know what? Don't come in August. And I hung up the phone. And I thought James Cobb was going to drop his pants right there. And he didn't know. He was like, what? I don't think anybody had ever heard a coach talk to a player like that. Right? And I didn't swear at him and all that stuff. I said, just don't bother coming.
Right.
Boom.
You
and I figured
don't come.
He'll call me back if he wants to play. Never called me back, never showed up. Right? And that's, to me, was addition through subtraction, because now we had James winds up rushing for 1,400 yards and whatever touchdown. I remember the last play of Thanksgiving, we played Friday night at our place, with about 4 minutes left, James popped off like an 80-yard run or a 60-yard run for a touchdown.
I remember that. We were at that game.
And he comes off the sideline, and I'm like, that's the way to end a career right there. You know what I mean? He had a great senior year. I was happy that he was able to go on. He plays fullback that year for us. He doesn't play at Columbia. Nobody wants a fullback. You know,
I mean, hell of a job.
So we had good players, but they just had never, ever been in a program.
Right.
And so they had to learn. And that's why, like I said, we had 36 guys that first year. It was and we went 0-3 to start. Like I was like, are we ever going to win a game? You know, when we finally won, I remember Sam Pomerantz, who was our middle linebacker, we were playing Fairfield, and we wound up winning the game, but about early in the third quarter, his face mask actually got ripped off, right? And he had his mouthpiece attached to it, so the piece that attached to the face mask ripped his lip or his cheek open. So he actually had to go to the hospital and get all these stitches. So I remember the game ended at 9 o'clock, and it was like 10:30, and I'm cleaning up and trying to get the uniforms ready, whatever. And he came walking back into the stadium to get his book bag and everything, right? And these zigzag stitches on his face. And I just remember him saying, Coach, did we win? Because he didn't know, right? There was it wasn't like they were posting scores back then. And I just remember saying, yes, we did. And he just like dropped to his knees. He was like, thank God we won a game, you know? But it just, those kids really hold a special place in my heart, because they put up with a lot of crap. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that year that when I did that to that one running back in the weight, just decided I'm not playing football. Now, I remember when I got hired, they said, your one requirement is you have to interview every single assistant coach. And if they're in the building, you have to hire them. They don't have to stay at the position. You can tell them what to coach, but you've got to interview everybody. And not a single guy wanted to get interviewed. Nobody wanted to stay. So I was like, in like August 1st, I was still looking for coach. The first coach I hired was Joe Kaufman. You want to know why I hired him? Yeah, because he came. He was like, I'd like to coach football. Never coached football before. He's like, I'd like to coach. I'm like, you're hired.
We know that.
For about 2 weeks, it was me and Joe. That was it.
Kaufman brought more than football to the table. Like, he taught us stuff.
You guys took advantage of Joe Kaufman. I'll say that right now.
Kaufman taught us how to mind our business.
It was a good way, though.
Kaufman
was a good way.
You're lucky Kaufman had a credit card.
Person.
Because you guys took him to the cleaners.
Well, and Tarzia, too. I remember Tony T, gloves and stuff.
Tarzia saved us a lot.
Oh my goodness, he used to take us out to grab
You guys
stuff.
had some great coaches that spent a lot of money on you guys. They shouldn't have.
People, yes, great people.
All right, so some questions for you right now.
Yeah.
What do you think athletes are missing now compared to when we played? Mentally, physically, are there attributes that they're missing? Do you think there's something that they need to work on? Is it societies? Like, what do you think?
I can only talk about football.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in football, I think there is a humbleness. Is that a good word?
Yeah.
That's missing. And I think it's missing from this current generation. You guys didn't have Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. It was all so brand new when you guys were in college. And so we missed all that. And I think there was an innocence to that era that ended when the social media stuff started. You know, we were talking about NIL earlier and all that stuff. And to me, it's really hard because if you look at the NFL, the coach-player relationship is more of a peer one.
Absolutely.
That's where guys are saying, you would call me Kevin if I was your NFL coach, right? But in college, it's still an authoritarian kind of regime, you know, where it's, hey, it's coach and what I say goes, because you have to have that. Because A, you have more players, and they're not truly getting paid per se, right? But now with NIL, that's changed.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so I notice there's a kid from New Haven that plays down at Alabama. And
the lineman?
And he's got his own website. And it says the person, the businessman, and the player.
Wow.
And those are the three sections you can click on. And I noticed that, so I clicked on the businessman because I had to figure this out, right? It's just, instead of him in a sweatshirt, it's him in a collared shirt.
Oh
Just, you know, it's like basically the same picture. But it's, I will partner with people who have the same goals and visions that I have. And in my mind, I'm like, how old are you? 20?
No idea.
What vision do you have? What goal do you have? Or if you know, like if Coca-Cola came and gave you $10, you take it.
Right.
You wouldn't care about their vision or their goal. You know what I mean? Right? Or we're like an oil company that goes and, you know, whatever, or you wouldn't even know because you don't, you know. So to me, it's just dangerous in that these guys believe that, you know, I coached a kid named Peter Bensavango at Western Connecticut. It was an all-league safety for us. Great kid, one of my recruits, played at Xavier up in Middletown. Really good friends with Will Levis. You know, and he tells a story of how, you know, Will got $45,000 to do some sort of thing, whatever, and then he came home and they went out to New Haven to get pizza, and Will didn't pick up the tab, and everyone's like, what the heck?
What the heck?
What the heck? Yeah. But like in Will's mind, he's like, I'm out with my boys, everyone's paying $8 a piece.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But in their mind, they're like, you just got 45 grand to do a car show or something. And
so you should pay.
So I think it creates some imbalances in the locker room that we're just starting to figure out now. And I think it would be really hard if Dez was getting $1.5 million and Ross was getting you know, $45,000 and you were getting zero for you guys to have the same friendship that you have now.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like that it changes everything. And I think in the pro locker room, it's set up to handle that. You know, hey, 53 guys, practice squad guys, put together. It's not that many guys. In a college locker room, I think it's tough. And I think a lot of players are super unrealistic about coming out and we get it even at WestCon. Like, what about NIL deals? And I'm like, how about you just pay for your tuition, bro? Because you're concentrating on the wrong things here. Like, we're trying to provide this experience, and for us, we played a very high level of football. We win, we score a lot of points, we play great defense, we do a lot of things that allow you to enjoy the college football experience. But the one thing we don't give is football scholarships. That's what Division III is. And so when you're not giving out money, and I say this to everybody, if I had to rank all the jobs that I've had a lot of coaching jobs in my day. You know, Stanford High would be what I consider the standard for me because of how much we enjoyed doing stuff together. And really, it was you guys enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed watching you guys do stuff together. You know what I mean? And it wasn't just you three. You guys had a great group of guys that you went through school with. From whether you were I mean, I look back at, you know, DeNaples and Teddy Weller and Blair Smart and those guys. I mean, you have to have some thick skin to be in the locker room with those guys, man, because they would rip you up. But you know, you had great people. And that's what I have at WestCon now. And I haven't had it since I left Stanford High. And I talk to Hawk and Reese about it all the time. Like, we just, as a staff too, like, I don't know if you guys know, like, we went out after every game, win or lose, as a staff. We went to the Fireside up on Hope Street because it was the greatest place in the world.
We shut that place down one time.
It burned it down, right? It burned it down. But that was our spot. We would go. one of the guy's kids was at Stanford High, so he knew us, whatever, and we were always getting a deal there, or whatever. But we enjoyed being together as a staff. We enjoyed going to clinics and stuff like that in the offseason as a staff. You guys enjoyed doing it. And then when we were all together, we loved going to basketball games and watching Vlad try to hit a free throw and stuff like that. Right? I'm still waiting for him to make one. But we enjoyed that stuff. And it was never a chore to get up and go to work, and then, we can go back, talk about the standard too. Like, people used to yell at me and they're like, kids are different nowadays. This is when you guys were kids, right? Now you guys are saying it about the next generation. Right? Kids are different now. Like, if a kid's a minute or too late, like, I don't know why you're screaming and yelling at them. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Like, in my mind, like, what? But because I know that contractually I had to be in my classroom at 7:15 because the second bell rang at 7:25 and you had to be there 10 minutes early in case a student came around. They didn't want students just sitting in classrooms by themselves, right?
Well, that was the thing with even study hall. If we were late, things happen.
But you asked, could I do the things that I did back then? I could do it. I'd have to adjust it. I couldn't have. I remember, I think it was after you guys left, I had done a project at my house with a bunch of railroad ties, like a little walkway thing. And I had a bunch of pieces left over, and I screwed them all together. And I laminated an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that said, "I let my team down." And I stapled it to the front of this thing. And this thing had to weigh 100 pounds. It was and it would sit out in the rain, be soaking wet. And if you came late or you missed something or you skipped class or whatever, you had to pick up this thing. I just made it. It was like a piece of wood sticking out, and it was soaking wet. And you had to walk up and down the track, and it said, "I let my team down," because I wanted everyone, because the track after high school, after the school got out, that's a popular place to be.
Right.
Now I wanted everyone to know that you let your team down.
Oh yeah, that
probably couldn't get away with
that. I think it's
gone. But there were a lot of guys in my last couple of years there that carried that thing, and a lot of them did it once.
Yeah.
And then, saying, hey, don't do it again is not enough sometimes. People need to understand. So I don't think I ever beat any of you guys. I mean, except for you, maybe a couple times where you deserved it or you challenged me.
I fight back now.
Yeah. But I mean, so many great players and so many good things happen. I don't think I would criticize how we did it. I think you should kind of praise how myself and the coaches did it, because it hasn't been replicated yet since I left. And, I think that the guy they have at Stanford High now is the right guy for the job. I lobbied for him because he's a Stanford guy. I think that's super. When I took the job at Stanford High, I lived right in Glenbrook. Like, I think it's important to have a guy that's around for all those things that we talked about.
Absolutely.
You want to be there, and guys need to know. I remember Oz Tung coming to my house. Like, he would get locked out of his house, and it was a long walk to my house, but if it was like raining or something, like, he would walk because he couldn't get into his house. You know what I mean? But they all knew where I lived, and they would like knock on and feel comfortable enough coming in, and he would sit down and put the TV on. Where I imagine let him be. He was scared of dogs too, which is funny. I always had dogs. I'd walk in, the dog have his paws on his chest, and he'd be back like this. But I think it was important. I remember Blair and Simon Smart, because they were always fighting each other, got into a fight in the gym one day. And Blair took the 45-pound plate when Simon's hands were on it, and he slammed it because he got mad at him. And he broke his finger in about 17 different places. I mean, his finger was like this. I remember that. And I remember they came to my house to, like, what should we do? And he's like, I think it's just dislocated. So I go and yank on it.
And it's like,
and he dropped down to one knee crying, But it was kind of cool because it was the middle of summer. Like, they felt good just coming to the house. And I think it's important to have a Stanford High kind of guy at Stanford High, someone that wants to be there and wants to be in town and wants to be part of this whole thing.
All right, it's that time. We got questions, we need answers. So I'm going to throw some questions at you. You just answer as quick as you can and a quick explanation if you want to. First one, would you rather coach college kids, high school kids, or pro athletes from your experience?
It's a loaded question because I'm coaching college now and I want to keep my job. But I'd rather, I think at some point in time I would rather coach pro guys just because of the maturity level. You can the X and O point, I can do so much more with them. And just like I can do so much more with the college guys than I could with you guys. I can just meet more and handle more.
If you can go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't change anything.
What's one of the most common myths with being a college football coach?
That there's an off season. That you're not working every single day. Well, the most common question I get is, well, what do you do now?
I'm working. You got to recruit.
When I'm not doing podcasts, I'm recruiting every single day, all day.
All What's the most memorable moment of your career so far?
Well, we talked about that first win, that my first year at Stamford High always will be a kind of a benchmark for me because of how it made us all feel.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, from a coaching perspective, I mean, I remember things of game. Like I bring up memories of guys like, you remember that? You know, like I remember everything that ever. I remember I was in Minnesota. We beat Purdue. Mike Allstott was a senior. We beat them in the Metrodome, and they kicked a field goal, and it went like this: right, left, right, and it missed off the right. You know, like I remember these moments and big wins, and there's been so many. It's hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, winning the league this year was for us going to the NCAA playoffs for the first time in 21 years. That's a huge deal.
Right.
That's going to be, maybe it's not now, but a couple of years from now, it's going to be like, wow, that was a big thing. You know, 21 years is a long time to go without a playoff berth.
When you're looking for recruits, what are some things you look for off the field when you're recruiting?
Well, off the field, it always starts with your grades. Like the grades are I don't care how good you are, it gets cut off if you can't read and write, you know? So number one is always the grades. Number two for me is the film. Like I don't care what your head coach says. I don't care that you were all state. I don't care about your stats. Yep. Show me the film, right? And if your film is good, I want you because if you fit in, you got to fit into the system.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you know, obviously we go into the personality traits and all that stuff. Do you fit in?
When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
That's a tough one. You know, I think that I view communication as a primary process. So I think my relationship with Alex is different than my relationship with Ross, and you know what I mean. But then when we're all together, it's another kind of relationship.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think it's hard to. How do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as Olivia and Ava's dad, first and foremost. Deborah's husband, distant second from that. And then as a guy that loves like I love coaching football, and I work a lot in the off season with NFL game management stuff. Like there's a group every Friday we meet, and if you saw the group that we met with, you guys would be shocked of who's on that phone call or that Zoom call. And I'm really into that, and I love it. But you know, when guys talk about, do you think that you want to stop coaching and get into this game management stuff? And I'm like, man, maybe, but not yet. You know, there's something about coaching that if you're good at it and you're a real coach, like you can't just stop.
Yeah.
Look at Saban. Saban had 10,000 things to say about why he could have kept going, you know, but just he got to an age where he's like, this last season killed me.
Yeah.
And when I get to that, you know, then
hang him up.
Who knows? But how am I going to be remembered? I don't know. Hopefully, most of the guys, you can't please everybody, but most of the guys had a positive experience. Most of them feel like, hey, that guy had our back. He was doing things the right way.
Yep.
You know, and then I may not have realized it at the time, but in the end, shit, it helped me do what I wanted to do in life. And that's kind of what teaching and education is all about.
Last one. You had this talent. I don't know if you remember this, but I can name a college and you knew the mascot or you knew the team name. You remember that?
Yeah, I mean,
so any D1.
Now, it's got to be like D1. Like you can't go like.
I'm not gonna go. Some BS. But
the first
D1.
First one, he's gonna go deep on me. First one.
Listen, I'm gonna build up. So I'm gonna name the school. You got to name the.
I haven't done this in a long time. Okay.
Yeah. All right. East Carolina.
Pirates.
Memphis.
Tigers.
Navy.
The midshipmen or the goats. Right? Their mascot's a goat.
Tulane.
Green Wave.
Charlotte.
UNC Charlotte. Give me a second.
Yes.
Got his ass.
Yeah, you got
South
me.
Dakota.
You got me. Because they weren't D1 back then.
They weren't D1 back
then. UNC Charlotte. Let's come back to that one. Maybe I'll think of it.
Rice.
Owls.
UAB.
Alabama Birmingham is the. Yeah.
You got you're close.
The Dragons or something, right? The hell are they? The Stallions? I can't remember.
The mascot is the Dragon, but they're the Blazers.
The Blazers, okay.
UTEP.
Miners. How many of these you got?
All right,
North Texas, last one.
Oh, the Mean Green.
Okay. All right, he passed the test. You want to try Charlotte again?
The only thing I think was the Niners.
49ers, you were right.
Wow.
He still
Nothing
got it. He
changed.
still got it.
Fucking
He still got
asshole.
it.
Well,
He still got it.
but see, that's the jealousy that comes out when you're in the presence of somebody that is clearly more intelligent than you.
Wow.
And then you just get jealous and you strike out.
Put
And you
225
get
on
all
the bench right
aggressive.
now. Let's go.
I
I'm
would
repping
beat you
out
in that
more.
too. There is nothing that you, maybe your vertical jump probably, because I can't really move anymore. That's about
I'm
it.
getting hands inside. What?
Oh,
Let me ask you a question. What was it like the first 30 years of your life with no pectoral muscles whatsoever?
wow.
It took a while. It was the graves.
So how did I do? I passed that
You
test.
you
I
passed
still
the
got
test.
it. I still got it.
Hey, we just want to thank you for taking the time.
Appreciate
I know
it.
you're busy for coming to see us.
Not too busy for you guys.
How do the people get in touch with you? Social media
anything.
or any of these kids
My
on Twitter?
Twitter account is at KJonesNFL. And I have an Instagram account, which is the public one is at Westcon_DC.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Reach out.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate
Reach
you.
Appreciate
out.
you.
Oh, go.
Oh, go.
It's your boy A. Joe. If you like what you saw today, hit that subscribe button, like and share. If you need to check us out, hit us up on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. If you got any feedback for us, comment below. If you got anything you want us to talk about, let us know.
XenHouse, yeah. XenHouse, yeah.